Okay, yeah, let's start with the most common question, especially with this day and age. Let's address, what is yoga? What is really and truly yoga?
See, there's obviously so many people, a lot of people have said so many things. Today, if you have a look, social media is filled with so many experts. A lot of people have written so many thousands and thousands of books on it. And I think it's a burning question, especially now, this day and age where everyone is at least talking about spirituality and yoga. But I think it's still at a surface. Not many. It's just become a really buzzword. It's kind of become a fashion to talk about yoga these days. So now is the time to really address in terms of what yoga is all about. Why today we need to basically start practicing and start embracing yoga. But to really understand the yoga, see, traditionally in India, we don't call it yoga. I don't know where this word yoga came from. I think it's still a Western word.
Lululemon has coined it.
So it's this suffix of "a." Traditionally in India, we call it yoga. Yoga. We call it yoga shastra, which is basically science. Shastra means science. So traditionally in India, we actually call it yoga. But to really understand what yoga is, one needs to understand the opposite of yoga. And that's quite easy to understand. I mean, look around these days, everything we see, everything we experience. 2020 has got so many surprises for us, going through the pandemic and then now what's happening in America.
Yes.
All these things are a perfect example of the opposite of yoga,
Yes.
what we normally call it as V-yoga, a complete detachment, right? So now it becomes relatively easy to understand what yoga is. So yoga basically means perfect partnership. Yoga also means a union, right? And that's easy to explain, especially when you look around. This whole creation and the existence is nothing but an example of yoga. For example, we here on earth, we experience the sun rays because the sun is in perfect partnership with the earth. And that's nothing but yoga, right? Through its sun rays, it's in perfect partnership, it's in perfect union with the earth. The tree is in perfect union with the earth through its root. This body system itself, the way it's structured, the way it's, all the body parts, it's in perfectly partnership with the life through the air. So these are some of the examples of that partnership. So yoga is nothing but a perfect union and partnership. And what yoga probably stands is, to be able to have that perfect partnership of union, now we need to understand the deeper science, which is the alignment. We don't simply experience the sun. There has to be a proper alignment of the earth and the sun. There has to be some alignment. Now we're talking about some deeper science. So to be able to experience a full-fledged life, for example, to be able to actually connect with the life, now we are talking about doing some processes, some kriyas, so that our body is now in perfect alignment. Only then we can experience all these things. Only then we can experience a full-fledged life. Right? So unfortunately, over the period, yoga is now only people, when someone talks about yoga, they automatically think about asanas and
stretching,
the physicality of things. And my teacher always used to say, yoga is something which you practice outside the yoga mat.
Yes, yeah. And it's so funny, 'cause we've attached very heavily to, you know, rolling out the mat, that's when
Yeah.
yoga starts, and then
Yeah.
rolling up the mat, that's when it finishes, but it really is
Absolutely.
a way of life.
Absolutely, and yeah, that's like I said, it's a deeper science. So all you're doing, you basically just connecting with the universal energy through the practice of some kriyas, which we call it as yoga, basically. So like that, there are certain processes, there are certain steps where you can actually start making progress in yoga.
Yes.
So Sage Patanjali, basically he prescribed some methods, what is commonly referred to as Ashtanga Yoga, for someone who wants to start their journey in yoga. So there are 8 different principles. One of the principle is the asana, which is the physicality, which has gained the popularity. So if someone talks about yoga, we are basically referring, or at least they are thinking about the asanas, the physicality. But there's obviously more than that. We in this whole process, in practicing this whole kriyas, whether it's meditation or breathing processes or pranayam, we're constantly making these efforts to make sure our body is perfectly aligned to finally connect and experience that universal energy. You know, and that's what yoga is all about. It has to be a perfect partnership. But to be able to get there, we need to understand the science behind it, which is why our body needs to be properly aligned through the practice of asanas, through the practice of pranayam, and so many other things.
So ultimately, we're fine-tuning our body as like an instrument. It's kind of like a guitar. You've got to put it in tune
Absolutely.
to play it pretty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's such a perfect example, you know. And even if you want to run, if you want to make sure your car runs faster, you got to fine tune it,
Yes.
making sure the
Make those
carburetor
modifications.
is this way, the oil has to be in this proportion or whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
So these are all the minor adjustment, fine tuning, making sure that when it comes time for us to basically, it's basically a process of enhancing your perception too.
Yeah.
You know.
So for people, for the everyday person, they're hearing you say, okay, you can fine tune this car. What are they fine tuning for though? So for people who don't understand, obviously, this is something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about. But for the average person who has assumed this is just stretching, what is it that we are fine tuning our bodies for? What happens when we align our bodies to be ready, to be aligned, when we do all the steps to be aligned with the universe? What are we aligning for? What does that do? What are we leading to? What is this going to give us?
So, so this is one area which I normally encourage people to experience, right? So this again, unfortunately, has got to a stage where, see, so many people talking about spirituality, and my teaching methods are such that it's my moral responsibility to provide techniques which has been prescribed by all these ancient sages.
Mm-hmm.
These people are the people who were actually great scientists and mathematicians, who understood this body system and who also paid enough attention to understand the cosmology and the effect of the external forces. Gravitational force is one example like that. There are so many external forces, planetary forces, and the influence it has on this body, right? So they understood everything, and they prescribed certain methods. Asana is one of them, pranayam is one of them, meditation, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. They're all these, Sanskrit words. Once you start practicing all these methods, this is something now you start experiencing. So you don't need additional books or apps or convincing to be able to explain in terms of what are you going to achieve. Because now I'm leading you into a space where it's my imagination, not yours. It's my experience, not your experience. Mm-hmm. So that's the good thing about yoga, is through the practice of yoga, once you start making some progress in yoga, these are some of the things which you start experiencing. And it's again science. Like I said, it's you becoming more receptive towards the nature, towards the life process itself. Otherwise, normally, you'll see that we've just completely shut ourselves with the life, with so many things around. You know, people are getting mixed up in all these things and busy with the corporate life, and you can see that they just completely isolated themselves with the life. Only when you open up yourself, only when you start living a real wild life, only then you can experience it. And what you experience is, it's your experience and it's your journey. So when we're doing all these things, there's a step-by-step process of how you can actually make progress in yoga through the practice of yamas. Perhaps in the next session we can address what are those 8 principles. But what these sages are trying to do is, someone who's completely new to yoga, someone who's asking all these questions like you are, in terms of what is it, what is it, does it actually do to you when you start practicing yoga? So to be able to get to that stage, even before that, we have to come back, stick to the basics, and then start practicing yama, niyama, asana, which is a physicality, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So it's a journey which is basically from gross to complete subtleness, when it's, a complete cessation.
When you say gross to subtleness, and I ask this for obviously the average person, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
So, imagine when you were only 5 or 6 years of age, you were so naive, pure. You had no jealousy, you had no fear, you were so open. You would go around, mix up with anyone without even thinking, what kind of person he is, whether he's got money, what social status that person has, whether it's so many things. These days, even before we start socializing, we start dissecting. We have so many complex calculations going on, and that's the world we live in, unfortunately. So these are the things, these are some of the habits, these are some of the tendencies which we have accumulated over the period of time. We started going to the school, we started mixing up with different people, then we got exposed to the media. So many things, life experiences, good or bad. Through those experiences, we have accumulated so much of garbage in our head. So yoga is also something which is like a reverse engineering process. It almost makes you like a small child. So that's what I'm talking about when I say a journey from gross to subtleness. It's basically through all that garbage which you've accumulated, mixed emotions, whether it's anger, fear, depression, jealousy, all those things. We basically try to flush out all those emotions, filtering all those emotions until you get to a stage where you just sit still, happy, blissed out, and you don't need external stimulants to be in that state of mind.
Yeah, we have a lot of external stimulants nowadays.
Exactly right.
What are your thoughts on the way that we've taken? Obviously, yoga has taken a real online presence, especially with COVID. I think a lot of people are turning to the online knowledge that they have. What do you think with that direction of yoga and where that's all going?
Like I said, these days it's become a fashion to talk about yoga. It's good that at least people are coming to this, that spirituality is the way to go in the future. At least people are coming to the terms, but they're still on the surface. Majority of them, the ones, especially the ones I see on social media, they're either doing it for the sake of publicity. Like I said, it's just become a fashion to talk about yoga. It's just become a buzzword. People putting pictures of them doing Padmasana and all complex asanas.
Yeah.
A simple picture of them holding a butterfly in their hand would say a lot about them practicing yoga, them sitting into Padmasana. For example, see, the very nature of a butterfly, it is so delicate. at the same time, when it has to survive in the wild, it has to be super careful, right? Holding a butterfly like this, not like this. You have to hold a butterfly like this, and that butterfly, when it actually sits on your hand, if it sends a slightest amount of fear, it will fly. So for you to basically hold a butterfly for 5 minutes, imagine how much balance you need within you. So in fact, you holding a small butterfly will tell a lot about you practicing yoga rather than sitting in Padmasana. And it's again coming back to the same thing. It's very much focused towards the physicality. There is one aspect, yeah, good. Through the practice of asanas, what we are doing is we're making our body ready for the further complex processes. So that actually, when it comes time for you to actually sit down for meditation, you can actually sit down there for hours without complaining about back or neck or whatever. That's the whole purpose of practicing asanas.
Yes.
And then people experiencing all this, different. I feel great. I feel energized, and these are basically just the byproducts of it, which is good, but that's not the aim.